So that place of staying steady and being willing to make mistakes and learn until you find what is your intuitive voice. What's that call from the divine? What does it feel like in your body? And I had a lot of places in my life, and I still do, where I'll be listening to something that I'll think, okay, that feels like clarity. And it's actually a pattern that's grabbed me that I'm holding on to. And the only way, I feel really the only way to learn about your intuition is willing to take an action and then pay a lot of attention and be honest of where did it come from? Oh, that one came from fear. Okay, got it. What was I feeling like before I took that action? I had fear, but there was also this anxiety versus the time I took the action where I had fear, but I also felt this open-hearted, yes, okay, I can do this. So there's a lot of sorting that we get to do around intuition.
That was HeatherAsh Amara, world-renowned author of Warrior Goddess Training, and this is episode 9. Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Yay, HeatherAsh. I am so excited that we get to have this conversation today. We've been talking about doing this podcast, and here we are. So thank you, sister, for diving in with me today. Yeah.
Absolutely, Tanya. I'm so happy to be here. We're going to have such a good time together, as always.
Yeah. I think how everyone knows you is your book, Warrior Goddess Training, and you just came out with a new book this year as well. But I feel like at the heart of the brave woman is the warrior goddess and the work around coming up with that idea and then having that blow up into this full-fledged organization and empowering so many women around the world. And so I'd love to start with who is the warrior goddess and how did you come up with this book? Like, what's the story behind this path of the warrior goddess that you've been on?
I've been really tracking that a lot more lately because I'm working on a new book about that. Like, how did this happen in a way? One of the things that I'll share that I don't usually share is that when I was really young, I had a really unusual childhood in that we moved around a lot as kids. I was born in Hong Kong. We moved to Los Angeles. We moved back to Hong Kong. We've just lived all over the world and traveled all over the world. So it was really an incredible experience. And also really difficult to be kind of moved around so often when I was a kid. One of the earliest experiences I had was about wanting to write a book. So the same year, I think it was 1973, I was 7 years old. I sat down to write my first book. And I got partway through the first page and I was like, I don't think I've had enough life experience to write this. And I went off to play. And then later that year, we went to India. So my parents took us to India to go see the Taj Mahal and all the incredible tourist places. But the experience that I had that changed my life really was about 4 seconds. And we were walking down a road and I remember I was holding my dad's hand and I was looking at my shoes and I was worried. This is where my head was. I was worried my shoes were going to get dirty because the streets were so filthy. And I looked up and there was a girl about my age walking towards me. She was about 7, but she was barefoot in literally like dressed in rags, literally. We made eye contact. And in that moment, everything else fell away. And I realized everything is an illusion except for this love that I feel. Like I completely fell in love with this little girl and she completely fell in love with me and everything opened in my being. We passed. but that feeling stayed. And even though I never saw her again, and I forgot about that for so many years, something had reopened inside of my being, that recognition of the connection that we have as humans that's beyond anything else, and that really deep heart-centeredness. So that seed, I feel like the goddess planted in me early on. She's like, all right, we got a mission for this one, plant the seed. And I got into boys and alcohol and went to college and went into politics and got distracted in all the ways that we get distracted until I got what I think of as drafted. After being in politics for so long, I had this sense of okay, there's something else. I am missing something because I'm angry. All my friends are angry. Nothing's changing. And that was when I started studying different spiritual traditions. And I started with my background, which is my family's from Europe. And so I was like, all right, well, what were my ancestors up to? And started studying European shamanism. And it was the same light came on. I remember the first book that I read, I was like, there's a thing, this is real. That sense of being in relationship with nature, of connecting to other humans from a really heartfelt community way, of coming back into myself. And that's what I got that summer, just reading book after book after book. And I had no intention of teaching. I was super shy. I was very introverted, so introverted. And it was interesting because another political trip was actually what shifted that. And I had to start suddenly speaking in front of people. And I realized I liked speaking in front of people if I was speaking about something I loved. So all these different pieces started coming together. Literally, someone walked into the office where I worked with an article in her hand going, oh my God, I have to find this woman. I worked for what was called the experimental college. We had a lot of different teachers. I was the admin. I was not a teacher. She's like, I have to find this woman. I don't know who she is, but she's writing. And I'd written an article about Wicca and European shamanism and just my journey in the school newspaper. And I was like, that's me. And her next thing was do you teach? And I'm like, She's like, yes, you do. When are you starting? We're starting a circle. And so that was the draft of you're in. And that was when I was 22.
Wow.
And since then, I've just been in service to the goddess, to helping women really come back into their power. And that's where Warrior Goddess came from, was that I had done so much work with the goddess and with the circles and the magic of that, but I felt something was missing in my study. And that's when I found Don Miguel Ruiz and the Toltec wisdom, which is based out of Mexico. And that's really the warrior. The Toltec energy is very much about focus and clarity and get rid of what's not yours. And so it really is that blending of the nature-based spirituality that was my foundation with this very focused warrior. Let's show up 100% in integrity, in impeccability, all the tools to do that. So warrior and goddess.
Whew. I literally felt my body just light up when you were sharing about that passing moment with the little girl. And I felt my own eyes get welled up with emotion and just feeling that there's an intimacy that happened in that moment, right? And when we connect heart to heart, the soul, and how that instant cracked you open and set you on this path.
Yeah.
Woo. Wow. Yeah. And just feeling that and being guided on the path. And let's talk about this, of so many of the women who are here listening to this podcast are on their spiritual path, are finding what is my soul purpose. And that piece, because you have to be brave, you have to be bold. And here you are as this admin saying, no, right? And what you said was, for me to get on stage, for me to speak, I have to talk about something that's here in my heart, right? That I'm passionate about. And that's what has us then show up. It's all coming from the heart. And so, is there anything else for the women listening around following your heart, following your passion to be on your soul path?
Yeah, such a good question. I'd say there's two other huge pieces around owning that bravery. And there's so many, but I'll just like two main ones. And the first one is just that when something comes in, pay attention and take action. Even if you're thinking, I can't do this, I'm not the person, they've made a mistake. The universe, I've seen this over and over again, will be like, hi, sweetheart, we need you here. And we're either like, I don't know that, or that's not me, or that must be somebody else, where there's this line you're being invited into. And it may not be where you land, but it's the doorway in. I think a lot of the times, and we have to have that courage and that, yes, just say yes to the invitation. You don't know what it's going to look like and what it's going to lead to. I'd say the second is around learning to listen and ascertain. I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting the first, but I'm not. Listening and ascertain the difference between your own strategies, agreements, fear, wanting to stay small, the places that are going to expand and open into something new. And really what it is learn what's your intuition versus what's your own bull. So that place of staying steady and being willing to make mistakes and learn until you find what is your intuitive voice. What's that call from the divine? What does it feel like in your body? And I had a lot of places in my life, and I still do, where I'll be listening to something that I'll think, okay, that feels like clarity. And it's actually a pattern that's grabbed me that I'm holding on to. And the only way to learn about your intuition is willing to take an action and then pay a lot of attention and be honest of where did it come from? Oh, that one came from fear. Okay, got it. What was I feeling like before I took that action? I had fear, but there was also this anxiety versus the time I took the action where I had fear, but I also felt this open-hearted, yes, okay, I can do this. So there's a lot of sorting that we get to do around intuition. And then the third one is to have community, to have other women, especially that are on a similar journey of making bold choices and really continuing to hone what's my intuition and what's not. Because it's that community that role models us new ways of being, holds us when we're really freaked out, inspires us beyond what we know, reminds us what's true. So we need all those ingredients. And those have really been, I'd say, the three main, community and mentors, having good mentors, which I think of as all the same thing.
Yeah. I would love to hear, was there a time for you when you were spiraling out, freaking out, and you had a moment when community held you, that really had that get anchored in of the importance of community in your life? Is there a time that you can think of?
It's like 800. I'd say the most drastic, for sure. The most drastic, because there have been so many, but I had woven my life really tightly with my husband at the time. So we were teaching together, we were running a business together, we were beloveds. So every part of our life was entwined. And so when the relationship started to dismantle, it was very challenging, let's say. And my teaching partner was involved. So basically my husband fell in love with my teaching partner. To then go through 2 years of agonizing, what are we going to do about this? And then for him to leave, I was left with the community and myself. Basically, and the community just lost their dad. So I'm kind of like single mom to all of these people, and I'm devastated. There was a moment during that process My first response was like, okay, I have to just buck up and like hold everybody and show everybody I'm fine. And I felt into that and I'm like, that will destroy me, actually, because I could feel it would be so inauthentic for me to put a mask on and try and pretend everything was fine when I was not. And yet I still had to keep everything running. And so there was this moment of like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to heal. Like the amount of pain I'm in right now, I'm going through it. I'm not going around it. I'm going through it. And I let my community know that while I also held them. But then I made sure I had people, and I shouldn't even say that, like people came and just held me up basically for about a year as we got through. My dear friend Sarah like went so out of her way to just be there. And I was in so much pain. I had to pass friends around at that point. Like people couldn't hold the amount of pain I was in. They'd be like, okay, uncle, you got to go to someone else, love. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd go to the next person. And so I got literally got passed around with a lot of loving people. And my friend Sarah ended up coming and flying from California to Texas to teach with me for a year, just to help me keep the community together. Wow. That was the biggest, like, okay, I could not have done that by myself.
And was there a part of you that was thinking I'm too much? And are these people like gonna kick me out completely? Did that come up for you of this self-consciousness, this shame?
Yeah, all the time. I told Miguel, my mentor, early on when Raven left, Miguel was like, oh, honey, he's gone. Just move on, sweetheart, which is just very Miguel, which was true. And I could not do it. But I had this, like, I should be able to get over this. Like, I should be able to just let it go. He's made a choice. It's clear. Just let go, sweetheart. And so because I wasn't able to do that, I had this dual thing happening. And this is where I feel like I really integrated myself, because the dual thing was I should just be over it. And that split that we so often do as women, and that I had done my whole life, which is I should try and like be better and be okay and be perfect. The coming home was I'm going to hold the shame that I have, that I'm not over it, but I'm going to choose to go through and like be messy and figure this out. And of course, it wasn't about my husband leaving. It was, but it wasn't. There was so much buried pain underneath that. And I finally like ripped the bandage, ripped off enough, or the scab ripped off enough. And I gave myself the space. And I said to myself, as long as it takes. That was my mantra, as long as this takes. There are times like, can't this be over? Nope, it's not done. And so I got to go in to that deep, deep wound and start the cleaning process and be with my process of it. Like, however messy this gets, I'm in with you, girl. We're going through. But yeah, there was lots of self-doubt along the way and lots of, can't this be over? And why is this taking so long? And then I would come back to my mantra of like, this is deeper than just this moment. This is something really important that I could feel. But it was hard. And yeah, my friends would be like, we can't hold you. And then I would have to like find that in myself.
Yes.
As well. It was that combo of like being passed around and held and loved, but also like they would then pass me to the center, like, come on, find your feet. Yes. Right? Yeah, you can do this. And I'd be like, I think I can do this. Okay, I got this for a minute. Then I go back into the story.
It's like Michael Brown talks about in the presence process, don't shoot the messenger, get the message. Take our focus off of whoever's triggering the wound and allow ourselves to go into the shadow and go into that wound. Then that's the integration. That's what has us then become embodied, because we went fully into that pain, that grief, and everything that's there that hasn't been dealt with, right? So that was an opportunity. So many times we think that these circumstances are the end of us, but actually they're just opportunities, right? For us to go deep and to do the deepest healing work, to crack ourselves open.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. Like at that time, I had a successful center. The books came right afterwards, but I had self-published books. Like I had the whole, like I was a leader to a lot of people at that time. And it's interesting because that was this compared to what I'm holding now. And it really was me going through the trauma.
Yes.
And learning how to hold myself and learning how not to abandon myself at a really deep level that allowed everything else to open up. Because I ended up then fighting for a year to keep the center together and then realizing, well, we lost the lease. Like the universe was like, okay, sweetie, good job. Now let go. So then I had to let go of that layer. But what then opened was so much vaster than would have happened had I not gone through that journey.
So it's the initiation.
Yes.
And if someone was asking, HeatherAsh, how did you build this? Like that was the portal and the initiation that going into that depth allowed you to come fully out and hold the vastness of the warrior goddess training organization that you have today. And that's a critical piece. That's the brave path. We look at like these leaders and how are they able to do it? Here, it's usually at that place that you just spoke into, right? Is you went to the depths of the valley, you went into the dark night of the soul and did the work to then emerge and you expanded your capacity from that, right?
Yeah, so true. And it's that willingness for us to turn around and face whatever we've been avoiding or running from however old, whenever that was. So for me, the pain was around years and years of moving, of missing, like difficult relationship with my dad, places I'd never grieved. And it wasn't like, I'm going to go thoroughly clean everything up and I need to know exactly what happened. It was like, I'm just going to go through this incredible pain, trusting I don't need to know where it came from or what exactly happened, but that if I metabolize it, if I show up with it, knowing I'm going through and not tell myself the story so I get stuck in it. But that warrior, was that really that combination of finding the goddess energy to hold me in other people and in myself, but also having the warrior to go, I'm going through. It can be a long pathway through. And that, yes, on the other side, and that was not what I was expecting at all. But then the capacity then opened up because I was no longer afraid. I won't say of anything, but my level of fear of my own emotion or what might be in there, like I let go of, okay, now I'm fixed. I didn't come out going, okay, now I'm fixed. Now I can do my work. I came out going, all right, let's see what comes up next. And I think that's sometimes where women, especially leaders I see, can get themselves into trouble, where they'll go through an initiation and then be like, okay, now I'll be a leader. And what my belief is when you're a leader, you're going to be initiated over and over and over again. You're going to be asked to go into challenging areas in your own life because you have to go clean those up. And you have no idea what's going to show up when and what's next to clean up.
Yeah.
So if we could just go like, okay, I signed up for an initiation over and over again, then you're open for it however it arises.
And that's how we then get to stand in being the example, being in integrity, being embodied in our leadership, like being the real deal. And that's what we can rely on you for as a leader, is that HeatherAsh is going to do the work. At the beginning, you were talking about ancestors and connecting of like, what were my ancestors doing, right? And that place of like, oh God, I'm like stuck in this anger and like, this doesn't feel aligned with the political path, right? And so then there's this connection with ancestors, then being guided, listening to the clues, and these mentors showing up. And what's occurring to me right now is how our soul is putting these mentors on our path and almost like, did we know them before? have you had this really kind of uncanny spiritual connection with the various mentors? And what are some of the things that really stood out to you around selecting your mentors, working with your mentors, some of the things that you learned? Because that was the other part too. You said community and mentorship, and it's all part, right?
It is.
There's something about the soul, right? And so many of the women here listening are on that soul purpose and like on that soul path. And how do we come into that full alignment? And that mentorship piece is a big part of that.
Yeah. And it does feel like I was just so lovingly dropped, like, okay, here's your next person to continue your journey. It was a combo of my yearning. Like what would happen is I would yearn for something. I had the yearning of like, this isn't quite right. I'm angry all the time. I don't know what else there is. And that yearning and that desire, then I feel like led me the first time to a library at UC Davis where I went to school. No, that was like the awakening place was the UC Davis library and just reading books and realizing there was a whole other world that I didn't know about. And then it was again, the yearning of like, ooh, and now I want a person. The courage it took. This is such a great little story I'll share because Miguel was like a big piece of this. But my friend and I, that we had done all the books, we decided we were going to do a big ritual for the community. I was still at college. And so there was this thing called a teach-in. So we were going to teach there. And we decided we were going to call Starhawk, who was one of our big inspirations through books. We'd never met her, to come and do the ritual. Because we're like, well, who else could do the ritual? Well, it has to be Starhawk. So we write her, people are like, no, she can't show up in a month for no money. We're like, well, weird. Okay. But then someone randomly said, well, there's a witch in town. And we're like, there is here? And they're like, yeah, B Street, you'll know the house. We went and knocked on the door, literally, to meet this woman. And she took one look at us and was like, come in, let me get you some tea. And she'd been solitary for years, super isolated, super solitary. And she took us on, like we begged. She's like, okay, yes, I'll teach you. I'll do the ritual. Yes, okay. And so that started that was our first circle. And then people started just we just pulled friends and we started, that circle's still running. That was in 89 or 88. Wow. That circle's still going this many years later.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? So it was willingness to listen and to follow. There was that instant recognition of like, yes, we're going to do this. Like we're in. And we did. We met regularly and we had this automatic commitment to each other. And things were different then. There weren't nearly as many distractions as there are now. And we lived in a tiny town. We could walk down the street and go meet with her every week. So world is different. I had other incredible teachers. My teacher, Caradwin, I saw her speaking and my whole body lit up. And I'm like, she's the next one. And literally the woman who had asked me to teach went and then asked Caradwin to teach. And Caradwin was like, okay. And what happened then is I feel like in a way I came to the end of the understanding of European shamanism at the time. It's evolved since then, but I hit a block there. And I realized there was a level of victimization. I didn't have the languaging for this, but there was a level of victimization, empowered victim that had woven through the community. I had that same sense of like, I'm missing something. Like I've come so far. I love these people so much and I'm missing something. And I did another prayer. There's something else. I know there's something else. I can feel it in my bones and in my soul. That's when I had the dream about Don Miguel. So there was that soul connection for sure I feel like me getting ready to enough capacity where my soul was like, okay, she can pull the next level in. She's ready. But it actually took me a year after I had the dream of Miguel. And the dream was like, this is the man you're going to study with. He's going to change your life. And the flash of Miguel. And I was like, I woke up going, right, where am I going to meet this human? Like I live in a tiny town in North California. And then boom, someone comes into that same office and says, oh my God, you have to meet this man. And my whole body simultaneously like, it's here and I'm not ready. Absolute knowing I still had a lot of work to do. It took me a year. where I said, okay, yes, I'll step in. I'm ready now. And then I was in 100% because it was family. I found my family is what it felt like. Again. Yeah.
What I'm really hearing is it's all in our bodies. Like the lit up, right? The body goes electric. The body's like ding, 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 right? It's a soul remembrance. It's a soul recognition that's occurring. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily ready yet. And so then it's, what am I doing the work to prepare ourselves to then be able to step into that next part of the soul's evolution? And I'm really clearly seeing it's the soul evolution during this lifetime for you. That's so powerful. Yeah, and inspiring. And how you listen and how you just really, it's just been so open-hearted ever since 7 years old.
Yes.
Magical, right?
Magical. Yeah. And in that magical, I also had to destroy things behind me in a way. And I'm still doing that. Like when I started working with Miguel, I had to let go of the goddess community that I'd crafted and created because I had to put all my energy over here. And there was so much wobble. There were some people that stuck with me through that time for sure, but it was like, okay, this, in order for me to step to my next evolution, this needs to start to dismantle. We just did this regularly with my organization. So for me, this is also ongoing of like this knowing of like, okay, here's the next place. You know, I have another mentor I'm working with right now that just helped me make a huge step in what I wanted to craft for my community. But it was so challenging and also wonderful. But to go back and go, okay, well, then I have to dismantle all of this behind me. So I could take the energy forward. So if you want to really move on your soul's purpose, I feel like it's that combo of like, follow the electricity for sure, like yes. Listen, and no, you're going to have to also take things apart to create space. That's how you continue to evolve and grow.
Yes. It's almost like a piggy bank that you got to crack it to open it, right? And then
yes, so you can put more coins in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and,
like a bigger container.
And that's uncomfortable, is every time we have to dismantle and we have to pull something apart because there's an ego attachment to the thing that we built or the thing that, oh God, well, I've invested all this time and money into this. I can relate to this, right? What do you mean? I thought everything was great, right? What do you mean I have to shift course or I have to do things differently? What do you mean I have to pivot? But it's when we pivot, there's the constant, because that is what happens with the evolution of the soul, is we have to be able to pivot and continue to step into what's next. Wow. And so you wrote the next book, Warrior Heart Practice. And so how was this writing a second book? Because so many artists, writers, authors, it's like, oh, I had an amazing first book. How am I going to match up? Did that come up for you?
Totally.
And tell us about the second book process.
Yeah, it's actually the 8th book process. There's a whole bunch of books that came between this and Warrior Heart, but Warrior Heart was a different book. So you're really right, because for me, like these are the 2 books, the most important. So it was definitely came up was, can I repeat it? And I really wanted, like, for me, Warrior Heart Practice, like Warrior Goddess is the one that the community has gone, this is our book. And that's, I'm probably going to go to my grave being the Warrior Goddess Mama, which is great. But I wanted Warrior Heart to be that book. I was like, this is actually my biggest gift to humanity. Like that's been my feeling with Warrior Heart. And it came out January and the pandemic hit March. And I don't think it would have done what Warrior Goddess did anyway, even without pandemic. I'm really coming to realize that because it's a very deep and it's a really beautiful book and it's deep. The process is really simple and it's deep. It's been quite a process of like finding the publisher, like wanting a New York publisher, finding a New York publisher, losing that New York publisher, finding another New York publisher, the process of it forced me, because it was a long process, forced me over and over again to let go of the book. To let go of, I want this to be a New York Times bestseller. I want everybody on the planet to read this. It'll fix that yearning I had for it to go out into the world in a really, really big way. There were so many places where I was very gently reminded, like, that's not the purpose of the book, sweetheart. You're just to give the gift and let it go. So there's been heartbreak around that book not doing what we had hoped it would do. You always hate that when your publisher's like, well, your book didn't do what we hoped it would do. But there's also just this trust and this joy of, like, it's in the world. I made the decision about 6 months into 2020. I'm already looking ahead, but into 2020, I had put so much energy in Warrior Heart. I pulled all my energy out of Warrior Goddess. And I made the decision. I'm like, okay, where the energy is here. It doesn't matter if this is, I wouldn't say favorite child, but just what I feel like is the biggest gift. That doesn't matter. It's going to go off and do its own thing, and I have to let go of it and really honor what's being called of me. And what we've done is we've just woven Warrior Heart into Warrior Goddess. So when you're in the Warrior Goddess community, you learn the Warrior Heart practice. And we found that actually is perfect. It makes more sense because people have a lot of spiritual work under their belt already, so to speak. And that's what we're seeing. People that are picking up that book are therapists that are like, oh, okay, I can use this with my clients over time. It's a really incredible tool to drop into a community that's been doing work together.
So it feels like the level 2.
Yes. Yeah.
It was already there. So it's perfect. And can we surrender? We have our attachments, we have our intentions, and then can we just let go and surrender to that this book obviously had its own energy. It had its purpose, and we can't control that. You can't control that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm dealing with it now. I've been called to write a memoir. I'm freaking out about, I have so many stories, like the stories are coming in now. I'll be like, oh yeah, there's that story and that weaves with this. And I've written the first 2 pages and they're breathtaking. The first 2 pages are great. And my agent was like, if you continue to write at this level, this will be a phenomenal book. And so now I'm like,
no pressure.
No pressure. I don't know if I can write at that level. And then I'll read another person's, like I'll read something and I'll be like, I can't write like this is so, like, how did they do it? So I'm at my edge now. And part of me, I've been watching myself. It's hilarious, Tanya, because the book that my publisher wanted me to write is like a very simple prayers book. I wrote, he's like, give me a kind of a proposal of what you would do. And I wrote a half-hearted because I'm like, I've already written this book. I don't want to write this one. So I gave him a kind of half-hearted one. And he was like, this is kind of half-hearted. What's going on? And then this other idea, a friend of mine was like, this is what you need to do. And I had the whole body. I'm like, whoa. But it's such an up level and it's scary because it's writing I don't know how to do. I'm like, can I just, and so I'm watching myself right now because I haven't been feeling well the last week. So this week I've been like, this is good to talk about. This week I've been like, I'm just going to write the other book. Right? Because I don't feel good. So of course that's where I'm going. But I have just waited out.
Yep. The way through.
Mm-hmm. Going through it.
So can you bring us a little taste of the process, the practice in the Warrior Heart?
Yes.
And just guide us through. Good. One of the things with this podcast is just giving everyone a little practice or a little embodiment process.
Yes, absolutely. There's 4 chambers. We think about the heart. We need all 4 of the chambers. All 4 chambers are important. And there's movement. And so to get ourselves really centered in our heart, we need to dismantle, there's that word again, the places that we've gotten things tangled together. And so the Warrior Heart practice, you move through this process and we start with the first chamber, which is the feeling chamber. So whenever you're out of sorts, it would be perfect for me to do right now. I'll use me as an example. So I would ask myself, what are you feeling, sweetheart? And not my story about I can't write the book or I'm scared to write the book or there's all these other, but just what's the feeling sense? And most of us are trained to avoid our emotions, to avoid the feelings. And so the practice, just by sitting with what am I feeling right now and not trying to fix it, intellectualize it, change, just be with it. You stop exiting and you come back home. Here's what I'm feeling. And just be with the feelings. So that right there, that's why I call it the warrior heart the warrior prac, because that's the warrior of like go towards. The second chamber, you don't have to sit with your feelings long, but you sit with where is it in my body? What's my experience? What's going on? And then the next question is, what's the story I'm telling myself? What's going on in my head? And this is the willingness to do a deep dive, not the surface of the story, but what's actually underneath. So if I started digging into my story, which I actually haven't done yet, so this is good, right? This is a reminder of use your own tools. The surface is, I don't know how to write this book. I'm going to write a mediocre book. I would rather die than write a mediocre book. Like that's kind of the surface level. But I know if I start digging, I'm going to start finding old stories of I have to do it right. I have to be perfect. That's still in there. That's gotten tangled up. The story, you look at where am I judging? Where am I feeling victimized? All the mess of the story, and you just bring it up to the surface. And then the third chamber is the truth chamber. But don't skip. It's really important that we go through systematically. What am I feeling? Because what we want to do is just skip. Do the practice, then ask yourself what's true here. The exploration is what do I know is actually true? And that willingness to get quiet and to listen to what's the deepest truth here. And what most of us want to do is write a better story. The truth is, it feels different in the body. When you really hit a truth, even if you don't like the truth, your body will be like, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Got it. Okay. So that willingness to wait for the truth to drop in. And then the fourth chamber is your intent. What's your focus? Where do you want to put your energy? One word. So the truth is going to be one sentence. And I always tell these people, if you've got a comma in your sentence or a semicolon or it's a run-on sentence, it's not the truth any longer. It's one simple sentence. Your intent is one word, one quality that you're willing to put your energy towards. What's the focus? That intent directs what you're going to do next. So like for me, the truth, I'll just do the super, like the truth is I might write a mediocre book, period. And I might not, period. Those two things are true. Anything beyond that of like, but I should, or I want to, or it's terrible to write, like that's all story. I might write a mediocre book. I might write a great book, period. And what's my intent? What do I want? What's the one word that I want to put my focus towards? And so I would really sit with that of like, what's true for me? What is this book about? Why am I writing it? When you're clear on your intent, then how to go forward, which is so beautiful. And once you have your intent, you go back to the truth. So I'm going to sit with what my intent is, but let's just say my intent is cleaning. Okay. If I'm going to write a book that's about my life, I want to use it. I don't know if this is going to be my ultimate intent, but it feels like a good one. I'm going to use it to clean my own life.
Yes.
Right. To untangle whatever's there. I'm writing it for me. So cleaning, I might write a mediocre book. I might write a great book. I have that and I go back into the story. You're going back through the chambers. I go back into the story with these new allies is how I think about it and be like, all right, so what's in the story? What do I need to do with the story? Because the story doesn't necessarily just automatically dissipate, especially if the story involves somebody else. Like I'm going to be wrestling with this book for the next year. I'm in a relationship with this book, whether I think I am or not right now, I'm in, right? Whether I'm writing or not. But with another human or a community, the problem is still going to be there. But now you have new tools to figure out how to dismantle it, how to start to untangle and to bring more light and more love. And your intent, what your dedication is, I'm bringing my intent in to the story. And that's what starts to change it over time or immediately. Sometimes it does just dissipate and you're like, it's not real. But sometimes you're working to bring that energy through. I always have people close in the feeling chamber. What are you feeling now? And sometimes people feel this sense of relief and this openness, and sometimes they feel grief or they feel disappointed because there's an old emotion that has now been released to be cleared out, to be experienced. So there isn't a right way to end the practice, but it's an incredible tool. And just doing that, thank you. I'm like, okay, I got it.
So how do you feel now, Heather?
I feel so much better. Yes. Yeah. Because all the pressure's off.
And one thing you might not want anyone to know right now is how you were saying to me, Tanya, can we potentially reschedule this? Right?
Totally.
And it was like, okay, yeah, like I was open to it, right? There was no attachment to doing it right now. And it wasn't working out. So it's like, okay, so maybe that was just resistance. And maybe there was medicine here for you.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
And you did, and what that was so beautiful, HeatherAsh, is you were like, all right, so I'm good. I'm trying to open a back door, but okay, closing it. I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up even if I'm not feeling 100%. And the best the best medicine, the best part of us actually gets to show up because we're in that more tender space of vulnerability. So I just want to honor you just embodying every single thing that you're talking about on this call and just the level of authenticity that you got to demonstrate to us. So thank you. And that's the intention of the show is, and I have it even written on the notes, is when we look at the acronym of BRAVE, bold, responsible, authentic, vulnerable, and empathetic, and I have stars next to authentic, we embody this during our interview. And so again, like that intent, right? That power of intention. And that we hit all the points. Beautiful.
Yes. And I love when we got on the call, because I was in resistance yesterday. I'm like, I just want to sleep in. I feel yucky. And then it was like, okay, it'll be great. Like it always is. Whenever you and I talk, like there's always openings and insights and the beauty of showing up, even when you feel yucky. It's so true. My best teaching, my most insights are often when I'm a little rocky. There's more space for something that's not me to come through. So thank you for holding the space for so many women. And for me, as always, such an honor to get to be part of Circle with you and to be just holding this mission of being who we are so other women can be who they are.
Yeah. Oh, so good. What was just coming through was that like intent of cleaning, and this right here is what's going to make this book awesome, right? The remembrance of this and like working through. And that is the story of your life, is how you have just followed the clues. You've done the work. You go through it. And isn't that like what the book's going to be about, is inspiring, empowering women to go through the fire?
Yeah.
And you were a firewalker. So what's the lesson from walking on the coals, of walking through the fire?
The lesson for me with the fire is always, and it definitely relates here, is that place of you show up with the fire, which is the element of transformation, and listen, is it my time to walk or not? It's always about showing up and being in a relationship with the fire and listening and going through the fear, being able to befriend the fear, because the fear is energy.
Do you remember your first firewalk?
Oh my gosh, so clearly.
Let's end on this story of your first firewalk and the lesson you took away from it.
I was literally walking out the door. Somebody had said, my friend's doing a firewalk, you should be there, one of my mentors. And I was like, okay. And I'm walking out the door, and my friend Sarah, who had been burnt when she was 4, she had gotten too close to the fire and had burned the entire front of her body. So she had incredible scars. And I'm walking out the door and I hear, ask Sarah to go with you. And I'm like, I can't ask Sarah to go with me. She's afraid of fire. Ask Sarah to go with you. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I always argue 3 times. But the 3rd time I was like, got it. Sarah, do you want to go with me? I'm going to firewalk. And she literally looked up and went, yes. I said, get your purse. We're going. So she and I drove. I'll just say, here's how the firewalk went. We did the workshop. We went to rake the fire. And I'm like, what? This is fire? Like, what? Like, it made no sense to me how hot it was and that we were doing, they burned the coals down. They raked the coals. We all raked the coals out together. And there's a circle of about 40 women, and it's misting. It was such a beautiful evening. And this woman who is probably 40, and I thought she was ancient. I'm like, oh my God, there's an ancient woman walking up to the fire. And she throws her cloak off and she strides across the fire first. My brain exploded at that moment. I'm like, what just happened? I just saw something impossible happen. And a little bit later, my feet were like, okay, we can go. And I walked many times. And then one time I came back and I said, I just put my hand up to Sarah and she grabbed my hand and we walked together. Completely changed her life, completely changed my life. There's a whole other piece to the story, but what I got from that first firewalk is that magic of people coming together around something that is ancient and learning how to be in relationship with. It wasn't about powering over, it was about working with. It was about merging with the fire. And that has been a lesson for me that I continue to use, is that idea of don't power it over, how do you work with it? Yeah, so good. And that every moment we have that opportunity to stand up and be with our fear and go through it rather than let it stop us.
Beautiful. I remember my first.
I was going to say, tell me yours.
Yeah. And it was a team of us. And I got there, I'm like, nope, not doing this. Nope. I was a firm no. There was no one was going to budge me on this. And then one of the other guys went, and I had this moment of like, if he can do this, I'm going to do this. And so I was just like, I'm next. And boom, I just went, and I was just full on clarity, focus to the other side. And it was like this focus of, if he can do it, I can do it. And that's a great lesson, right? In life as well of, wow, yeah, like there's nothing unique or different about any of us. Like if they can do it, we can do it too. Capable.
Love it. So beautiful. You're such a good teacher.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. So is there anything that we've missed that you'd like to presence before we wrap here? Any final thought that's coming through?
Yeah, this just circling back around to this idea of really being brave is about learning not to abandon ourselves in all the little ways that we abandon ourselves, and really learning how to come back. And that journey to have so much compassion and gentleness and fierceness to come back over and over again. And to know that we're in this relationship with ourselves and with the divine, and it's the same thing. So how do you want to treat the divine? How do you treat yourself? This idea that there's a lot that we're cleaning up, and it's not just ours. There's ancestral baggage. There's the dream of the planet. There's just so much content that we're in the process of digesting and morphing. This paradigm shift that I believe we're in, knowing that you're not just doing your own work. You're not the only woman that's abandoned herself, that we're doing it for each other, that reminder. And we're going to be doing it over and over again, and holding each other's hands and being like, okay, come on.
So sisters, HeatherAsh has a meditation for you over at warriorgoddess.com/sanctuary. And you want to share a little bit about this free meditation that you have for our listeners today, a little gifty.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite meditations, and it's a really simple visualization to help us craft a safe place inside. So part of what we need to do to come back to ourselves is to start feeling I'm safe, I'm held. And as women, we often do that out here. I have to find the safety in the place I'm being held out here. And this is to say, it's right here, sweetheart. Build it. Here's how to start.
So perfect. Many times we're thinking it all has to be safe out there, right? And the brave woman creates that safety within herself. So what an amazing gift for everyone who's wanting to embody the brave woman. Again, that's warriorgoddess.com/sanctuary, and you can click that link in our show notes today. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation today. So grateful for our friendship over the years and to bringing our work and supporting each other. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Brave Woman podcast. Are you on Instagram or Facebook? If so, come join our IG community at Sistership Circle or our community group, facebook.com/groups/Sistership Circle. Up next, do you find yourself getting disappointed because you have unmet expectations? My friend Christine Hassler is joining me in the next episode to talk about getting free from your past and calling in exactly what you want.